This is the Mission Shape podcast. These are the stories of ordinary people walking with God and forming new Christian communities that fit their place, their people, and their purpose. Good morning, Martha. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thanks. Hey, Mark.
So for transparency, I'm going to say to our audience that Martha, this is an episode I've been looking forward to because Martha and I have known each other for a long time. I was trying to think how long is it?
Oh gosh,
it's many years.
Many years.
The same church. So the church I came back to faith in, it's a church called Oak Tree in Acton, West London, and
Great.
You and your husband Rob started coming there.
Yeah.
You guys went off and were part of a missional community for a while, weren't you?
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
And all that. Anyway, our history is not the point. So, Martha, why don't you tell us? First off, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, who you are, what you're about, and then maybe tell us about the community that you're involved in.
Okay. I'm Martha. Hello. I'm married to Rob, and we've got 2 primary school age children. And I've lived in London all my life. So has Rob. I was brought up in a church family, Baptist church. I studied theology at uni, at King's College, so in London again. Basically, I've always been in church families, but I've always been on kind of part of church communities, but really drawn to the edges. And wherever I've been part of a bigger church, there's always been if there's something happening on the edge or kind of seeing, different groups, what people are doing, then I've often been part of that. And so I went from Baptist church, I joined Soul Survivor Harrow, and that was the youth church of a group of churches. I was part of that, and then I'm on the kind of enabling leadership team as that, supporting young people there. And then at uni, stayed in London, as I said, and kind of looked at a couple of different churches. And then I found myself being drawn to Acton, and
good old Acton.
I was a good old Acton. And I was a secondary school teacher for many years, teaching religious studies. And I got a job in Acton, and then I had friends who moved to Acton, friends who moved to be a curate at the church where Martha and I met. And so I ended up going over there to Oak Tree Anglican Fellowship. And then a group of us went and started a missional community on an estate in Acton, staying in Acton still. And then kind of near the end of that, I felt the calling to start the discernment process. So kind of looking at becoming a priest in the Church of England, which was something I felt called to when I was about 17, but totally ignored. Because I found myself sitting, having a chat with the rector of St. Anne's, Soho, which is a modern liberal Catholic tradition kind of church, but in the heart of London. And I really felt God going, this is it. So it's very different from traditions I've been part of before, but I just really felt strongly called to it. We walked around, and part of it was kind of looking at, different things that if I was going to be the curate there, that we'd be part of. And he showed me, he said, look, this is next door to the church building. And this is where the charity centre point was. But they had to move out, and we're exploring a cafe, a coffee shop. And he said, so a part of it will be just having a look at what that could look like. And there we go.
Someone who's been on the edges and on the fringes of churchmanship throughout your life, you end up on the fringes by helping to shape this cafe attached to a church in Soho, which if anyone knows about Soho, I worked in Soho for a number of years at the start of my career. It's the media center, one of the media centers of the country. But it's also a very fruity kind of area, isn't it? It's very much full of people on the edges of all sorts of different parts of society.
Yeah, it's a really it's quite interesting. The previous curate, when he took me around Soho, because I'd gone to Soho when I was younger. There's like bars, music venues there, and he was walking around going, "Oh, and here's Ronnie Scott's," and I was like, "Yes, I know." And here's this bar, and then he went, and then above here, there's some social housing, and I visit one of our parishioners is there, an elderly lady, and over here is, and I was like, oh, I didn't know this. And there's this like wonderful community made up of this amazing eclectic mix of people, and that's kind of shown in St. Anne's. I saw that in the church as well. Yeah.
So tell me then a little bit more about this cafe. I remember we had a conversation a few months ago about it when we were just catching up about it. But I remember you mentioned a few things about it having a different sort of approach. Yeah, tell us about what it is you guys are doing and what's special about it.
So this is not my baby. This is really the baby of Jake Lee, who's operations manager, and also of Father Simon of Simon But Beat. It's like, this is their baby, so I'm kind of I love it, but I'm kind of talking about it on their behalf, really.
Sure.
But something that was really important was they were like, we need to show kind of the values that are important to Christianity, and so kind of like hospitality, and inclusivity, and kind of the importance of like impacting your community. So being a real community space, as well as having really good coffee. So I know, and there's some like, and there's lots of Christian coffee shops, like I've seen or I've been to, and they have amazing coffee. Yeah. And we're like, we need that it has to be good. And our, the ops manager, Jake, in his former life, he did, he was a barista. So it was always like, when I first turned up for an interview here, I remember they were like, "Oh, would you like a coffee?" Which, "Oh yeah, sure." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that'd be nice, thanks." And it was like, "What would you like? Would you like a flat white, or would you like this?" Or and they carry on. It was like with this lovely, like latte kind of art on the top. And I was like, "Wow, I have never been." I don't think even it's so it's like stuff being done really well. But also the important thing was that they kept them over and over again saying, we need to make sure we're serving people, not coffee. So it's like, it's about the people and getting to know people, and making sure it was a place where people could, where community could be built, and kind of nurtured as well. But it's quite open. So it's quite, and this is something I found like from doing kind of pioneering stuff in the past, is that you kind of get a little, like God gives you a little into like, I think you should start this should, but you have to be open to see what develops and what it turns into, rather than going with your own very fixed, rigid like view of something. And I think they've kind of been really open to that.
That's a very, very common thread that we see in this movement is, we have the Fresh Expressions journey, and the first part of the Fresh Expressions journey is listening. And again, I've probably said this in another couple of episodes, so sorry, listeners, if you're hearing it again, but I'm just remembering. The bit where we hear about the most important commands being, love God and love your neighbor. But that's preceded, of course, by "Hear, O Israel." So actually, the first thing you've got to do is listen. And in doing so, and many practitioners will be familiar with the idea of just going, actually, yes, listening. And sometimes people will have an idea, of course, and that will be inspired by what they've seen. They may not realize that they've been listening, but often people are listening. They're just observing and seeing a need and saying, here's a need.
And keep on listening, like continuously, kind of not just go, this was my chunk of listening, and then this is what we're going to do, but like continuously listening, reevaluating and saying, is this right? Like feeling your way. And something I found quite interesting. And yeah, like I said, I'd seen before when doing like pioneering stuff and things, of like doing like lots of little things and having a go at it. And the coffee shop is obviously like the big umbrella thing. Little things start in that, and you like have a go, and it, I don't know, down from even choosing the pastries or something, like, let's have a little go at these. How does that work? Test it out. And then it's like, there'll be, I know someone's putting on an event there, or, like a community event, and say like, let's try it out, see if it works. And just not being afraid of saying, actually, I don't think that's quite working. And try something else and going with that and being okay with that.
Adopting a culture where it's okay to fail.
Yeah, which is hard. Which is really hard. Like I remember when I was kind of going from my trying to go for ordination training, the missional community I'd been a part of for many years, it came to an end. And I remember speaking to the bishop that I was talking to then. And he said, so tell me about your missional community that was a failure. Why was it a failure? And I was like, oh, a failure. And it was like being able to talk about, like, actually, it wasn't a failure. There was amazing stuff that came out of it. But to say, like, what do we learn and how do you change and adapt stuff? And I think, like, what we're doing now with Sacred Grounds, it's giving, I don't know, I feel more comfortable now with that thing of saying, like, okay, have a little go at something. And if it doesn't work, okay, why didn't it work? And go with that. Yeah.
It's so important. And again, it's another thread that comes up on two fronts. One, our Western culture. It's very much about striving for perfection and getting something right and doing it excellently. So we get those pressures also from all of our major denominations. So from the Church of England, the Baptists, the Methodists. Wow. There are these structures at play, and rightly so. This isn't necessarily a criticism of them. They are necessary to help us build church in different ways, of course. But sometimes one of the negative sides of that comes is with the expectations and accountability that's directed in the wrong way, and that's difficult because often it can be seen, especially for the big denominations, the measure of being bums on seats, when for a lot of pioneers, it's not about that. It's about deep discipleship that's where the fruit is. But that's not necessarily measurable, and that's not going to necessarily go to common fund or that kind of thing. But the other learning that we see, especially when we look back over the past 20 years, how the church looks would not look the way it does. How the church looks today would not look the way it does had it not been for the pioneers of the past 20 years trying different things and being creative and doing all this great stuff and trying and failing and trying and failing. And also it's worth acknowledging, of course, that one person's failure doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to be another person's absolute win. You know?
Yeah, you can't assume, because you say something, it's a failure, but then like you speak to the people whose lives it has impacted and, who've come to faith and for it, and they wouldn't say it was a failure at all. And I think it's okay, but like we're saying, it's okay to say that something hasn't worked and trying it out. And we're in a privileged position where we are here. We did say about it before that to be able to have this kind of umbrella thing where you can try out lots of little things. And so I think at the moment, like, we do know the community really well here in Soho. Like St. Anne's, the parish church, has been here many, many, many years.
Uh-huh.
And they're really ingrained in the community here. You know, when it was looking at, like, they were meeting in little tiny rooms for many years because the main building had, after the Second World War, had been bombed. Like, it had been bombed in the war. And so they met in this little room. They knew their community, and they still do. And when it was like, oh, we don't need a church here anymore, let's just have a car park or something, like Soho went, we need a church. We need that. And that kind of thing has continued, that they're still listening and so ingrained in the community, but also willing to see what the community needs as the needs change to go with that. And I think this is just another way of saying, okay, how can we meet the needs of the community in other ways that kind of, looking at that.
Bearing in mind, as you've said, it's a coffee shop that isn't afraid to flex and flow and change. A church-run owned coffee shop that's fostering community. What does that look like? How does that play out?
Mm-hmm. So at the moment, basically, where you get the goods from, like local businesses, residents who, the bakery, we had crazy ginger and lemon shots from Seba, a young guy, as part of the church. Stormflowers, who's another local business. So that's kind of that kind of side of it. And again, that it's trying out if other people have ideas or things they want to bring into it. There's kind of space for people showing what they're doing in the community, like a community board, with different things there. Also, like a community event to start having there. So it's open. If it's for the community, it's for free for hire, like Soho Society, planning meeting, or LGBT plus like forum, like community trusts forums, like that kind of thing. Cuppa with a copper.
Did you say cuppa with a copper?
No. Brilliant. But so like people come in saying like, oh, okay, this is a place where like people are coming and you can chat to people and kind of find out what people's needs are. Also have like on Tuesday mornings, a Bible study discussion, and there's other stuff and things you can't quite put your finger on. So stuff where it's like just little conversations, little moments where the same people that come in and they're starting to meet there and you chat to them. There's just something to...
Going back to that stuff of building community, which is about building relationships, because a community is made up of the individual relationships, right? But that mesh of relationships is what becomes community. Yeah. That mesh and mess of relationships. You mentioned sort of there's a lot of community focused events, and you mentioned about sort of doing a Bible study and sort of the relational angle. Are there other aspects that are more focused on sort of faith building or Christian community building in that respect? Or is it very much that light touch of you're relying on the community, relational community building to then grow into something more faith-based?
I think it's still like I was saying, a lot of it, and this is why I think it can be quite frustrating to want to see like results quickly. And like I said, and that can be really hard. But I think a lot of it is still kind of listening and kind of, putting out those little hooks and saying, okay, is this kind of where we're going to get a tug, or is this? And I think it started in January this year. So it's still relatively new in terms of with businesses. So I think it's kind of a lot of that listening out. And it has, I think in terms of kind of, it wasn't wanting to be overt, and that was one thing that there was a concern about, not wanting to be overt evangelism. It's still evangelism, talking about Jesus, but not in a kind of in your face kind of way. which works in some communities and some places, but would not in this way work. Yeah.
No, I think we understand that. There's a key thing about in many pioneering communities that it's people inquiring about faith and learning about Jesus is often on their terms, not our terms. Yeah. Because if it's on our terms, then we're not listening, right?
Yeah.
If it's on their terms, then we're listening.
Yeah.
And often when the Spirit is gently prodding us to say, listen.
Stop talking.
And yeah. Shut up and listen. It's funny how those things just keep happening. Tell us a little bit about what are the kind of challenges that you have then? Because or are there some of the challenges that it is some of that stuff of like trying to resist the temptation to fall back into the old ways of doing things, going like, right, we've got to eventually get people on seats, and it's not about that. Are there other challenges from the community? Are there, what are the tricky things that you face?
I think a major challenge is it's a business. So it's looking at, and there are lots of coffee shops in Soho. This was something like, it's interesting that people's feedback has been like, there's something different about here. And so kind of in terms of, just kind of like selling coffee, like how much do you sell stuff for? And they're constantly like reevaluating their prices, but you still, you need it to be somewhere that's welcoming and open for everyone, so that so there's kind of, the prices are reasonable, but they're still kind of like, you can get a cheap, like, I don't know, builder's tea for £1 to take away, like, so that there has to still be some stuff there that is available to everyone, but whilst also recognizing that, like, the prices have to kind of fall in line with what other people are charging kind of in Soho. And you're having to obviously keep a business going. But kind of making sure like that's not the main thing. It's like the mission behind that. And I think that's been hard. And just starting a business up, I know, like, you're looking at, okay, how kind of just how you get routines, how you do stuff. The staff has been really cool. They're great, actually. They're wonderful. They're an amazing bunch. They're not from the church. They were hired, but people who were kind of really behind what we're doing. So I kind of can't put a challenge on there.
Those are still quite unique challenges. And often I think sometimes I see sometimes when I ask people what challenges they face, often people can be dismissive of their challenges because it's just, that's just life. And it's like, well, no, there's challenges, and some of the things that you don't think are challenges, and that's okay. I realize we're getting very, very short on time.
Oh, okay.
And I do sort of very briefly want to touch off on this before we sort of come to land a little bit. But we've talked about some of those challenges that you face. What kind of support? It feels because it's you're a little bit different to a lot of sort of the pioneers that we chat to a lot and practitioners that we chat to a lot, in that you're part of a team already, who are doing this stuff together, and it sounds, because it was the brainchild of other people already in your community, and it doesn't seem like you're lacking support in that way. And that it doesn't seem like you have the same challenges as some do of not having support, not having people to walk alongside. Are there other ways that you do keep yourself well in that environment that might be different to sort of more traditional church teams, I guess, or churchy teams?
It's hard because I think what you're saying is right. So I know it's very different from being like, when we're in like a missional community, you're like, that's you out on your own. Whereas here, it's kind of, we're in the rhythms of, rhythms of prayer, from the church, next door, as well as kind of, you start to build new rhythms. But that kind of, that being fed in that way. So I feel like it's very different. Yeah, it's very different from, I'd say, other pioneering, other fresh expressions in that sense. So I don't feel that kind of we're out on a limb kind of thing. And also something that we don't have, which often there's the kind of, I know people talk about like the kind of the pressure from the powers that be, and that can really put a lot of pressure on people doing fresh expressions, right? And kind of being torn. I don't really like, the person pioneer like Simon, like he's not the power that he like, but like it's his baby and he is the one doing it. So like it's and the church is just fully behind it and part of it. So I don't feel that we're starved of that kind of support. Like and
I think that's quite encouraging, I think, or should be encouraging for this. I'm sure some people will be like, oh, that's not fair. But I think we should be encouraged by it because they're often, I think, partnerships with more traditional churches do come with a lot of strings sometimes. And so to be able to do what you guys are doing and have the freedom to try is encouraging, and to know that exists is kind of being, and even in the situations it happens.
I think also something I feel really passionate about, that like a reminder that the pioneers are also like can be within like traditional churches as well. Like we need pioneers there as well, who they're excited and starting new stuff and not scared of that. And I think that's really good. And just the fact that fresh expressions, that they are fresh, they look totally different. It's like all going to look different. And they've all come with their own challenges. And kind of not to think your one's the best, but you're the best type, but like to say, like, this is just another way of doing it. Yeah.
You're right. And you're reminding me of the challenge I think I've said in a couple of episodes now, of sometimes within the fresh expressions movement, there can almost be a thing of trying to shy away from the established churches and saying, no, how they do it is wrong. And I always fight that almost tooth and nail, because it's not that anyone's doing it wrong, although some people might disagree with me on that. It's the fact that the beauty of this movement is there is a massive breadth of all sorts of creative things, right from doing stuff just a little bit different in a traditional sense, to some of the people who do some absolutely amazingly creative, very, very different things. And we've talked about those before.
Love it.
It is celebrating the breadth of Christ's
church.
It's not ours. It's Christ's church. And that looks very different. And I think, if anything, whenever anyone says, I think I've got it right, usually that's where we've got to challenge ourselves and go like, but do we? What else could we? And that's probably our attitude. As we come to a close, Martha, my final question for you is, people listening, what do you say to those people who might be thinking of doing something different?
Very simply, do it. So, don't be scared to Yeah, don't let your fears get in the way, and just listen to God, continue to listen to God, and just give it a shot, have a go, but just like hold on, keep your ear out, listening to God in what God's saying throughout it all, but just have a go at it. Just have a go.
Brilliant. Martha, mate, this has been delightful.
Thank you.
Good just to hang out,
Yeah.
or even better, what you're up to. And no, I think we wish you luck. We will be praying for you guys, as often I encourage people to do.
Yes.
We as a charity and the team will be praying for you. But I encourage our listeners always to pray for the stories and the people that they've heard on the podcast.
Yes,
So
thank you.
thank you so much for giving the time to tell us about it. And bless you. We wish you luck. And no doubt we'll chat again soon.
Yay, I hope so. Thanks, Mark.
Brilliant. Bless you, mate.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to dig a bit deeper, there's loads over at freshexpressions.org.uk. Things like Godsend, our toolkit for starting new Christian communities, plus loads of other resources, worship ideas, and real-life stories. You'll also find info about the gatherings we run throughout the year, books and resources in our shop, coaching and training for pioneers, and for the leaders across denominations, dioceses, and networks. You can sign up to our newsletter, follow us on our socials, or find out how to support and partner with us. It's all there on the website. Go take a look, freshexpressions.org.uk.